Hello, Zach here, and welcome to the 4th unit of our Wizards game Java course. Now today what we're going to be doing is creating our actual player in the game. So our wizard that's going to be going around this castle and shooting things and collecting ammo and all sorts of things, right? So let's go ahead and get right off the bat. So what we've done is we've created IDs, we've created game objects, we've created our complete back end for this. So now we can really start getting into the fun stuff, right? Now we can start doing whatever we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close a bunch of these tabs actually, because we don't need them. Probably just even delete that box class that we made and get rid of that in the game. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to name it Wizard. And of course we're going to extend our game object. Alright, we'll just add in these unimplemented methods here. Just get rid of all that auto-generated text stuff. Clean it up a little bit. Alright, and then I'm also going to create a new class called keyInput. And this is going to extend our key adapter. So in here we can say public void key pressed, key event E, and then public void key released, key event E. So these are methods that our key adapter that we just extended is going to use. Alright, so now in our tick method here of our wizard, let's just say x plus equals velocity x, because that's just how we use our velocity accordingly. And I want to set up the system so that we're not getting these like sticky keys. So essentially what we can do is in our key input, what we can say is, hey, if this button is pressed, then maybe the wizard's X position like goes to the right 3 pixels, something like that, right? If it's being held. But what I want to have happen is that yeah, it goes to the right 3 pixels, but if you immediately like go to the left, then you're gonna have no lag whatsoever. Alright, now it shouldn't make a lot of sense to you right now, especially if you've never done any sort of key input with Java. But essentially, if you're going to do it the way that I explained it originally here, where if you press a key, then it goes to the right this amount of pixels, you have lag between the keys. And it really just plays for, it's just an awful play experience if you're hitting the left key and it's not going left right away. You really want to have that nice stable control. So what I'm going to do for that then is pretty simply in the handler class, I want to create a private Boolean set of up equals false, down equals false, right equals false, and left equals false. And then I want to create a bunch of getters and setters for that. So I'm going to go ahead and generate those. Alright, and now I'm putting this in the handler class because in my key input here, I'm going to go ahead and initialize this handler here. Handler. And then in our constructor, I'll put that in the parameters and I'll say this dot handler equals handler. Notice how I'm not saying handler equals new handler. Because if we created a new instance of our handler in the key input, it would create a new list. And we wouldn't actually be accessing the list from before. So you always need to go transfer initially what we've created, which was the handler right here. This is the handler that always needs to be swapped to other classes. You cannot create a new instance of it. Alright, so in our key input, what I can do there is now, let's say in our game, right under our handler, we can say this dot add key listener, new key input, and then put in our handler in the parameters. Alright, and this is very important. You need to add a key listener because this is what coincides with our canvas, which shows the game, hey, we need to be listening for key input here. Alright, so in here we can say int e equals, or I'm sorry, int key equals e dot get key code. And now all we have to do is create a for loop between all of our objects. So I equals 0, I is less than handler dot object dot size I plus plus. Alright, and here we can say game object temp object equals handler dot object dot get I. And now what we can do is check, hey, if this game object that we loop through is our player, our wizard, then let's move it. So we can say if temp object dot get ID equals ID dot player, then we go. So this method right here is going to loop through all of our objects, and until it finds our player, it's not going to do any key input for that object. So we'll say if key equals key event dot VKW, we'll say. Then I'm going to say handler dot set up to true. Pretty simple. I'm going to copy and paste this down. So S, A, and D. So here we're going to say set down. A is set left. D is set right. Now I can copy this. Remember, this is for our key pressed event. Paste that down here, and this is our key released. So now we want to set all of this to false. If we release our W, we want to set up, down, left, and right to false. So now in our wizard, I want to bring in that handler class as well again. So I'm going to bring it in right here through our parameters. I'm going to say this dot handler equals handler. And here now all we have to say is if handler dot get or not is down, then we can just check and make sure that, or use our velocity accordingly. So let's start with is up. Then we'll say velocity y equals -5. Alright, then I'm going to say else if not handler is down, velocity y equals 0. So in other words, if you release the up and down isn't being pushed, then we're going to just set it to 0. Because if down is being pushed, we don't want to automatically set it to 0, because it would lag a little bit, and that's what we're trying to get rid of. So we'll say if handler dot is down, velocity y equals 5, else if not handler is up, velocity y equals 0. Alright, and then we'll do the same for the right. Handler is right, velocity x equals 5, else if not handler dot is left, velocity x equals 0. And then we're going to say if handler dot is left, velocity x equals -5, else if not handler dot is right, velocity x equals 0. So this could be kind of a maybe a little bit confusing to you. Oh, I don't even know what I just did there. But essentially what we're doing is in our key input, we're checking to see, hey, is this pressed? If it is, then we're just going to the getters and setters of our handler class and setting these variables to true, false, whatever it may be. Then we're accessing these handler variables through our wizard class and just checking, hey, this is essentially saying if handler up variable equals true, then we're going to set velocity y to equal -5. Now you also may be asking yourself, hey, why didn't we just put the up, down, left, right Boolean variables into our wizard class? And that's because since it's a game object, it's reading it as a game object. So we would actually need to put down our up, down, left, right variables into our game object class, which is not very efficient because we're only going to be using those variables once, and we don't want every object to have the up, down, left, right variables, especially the blocks and the coins and stuff like that. We only want the player to. So it wouldn't make sense to put it into the game object. Alright, so let's go ahead and just set a color here. We'll say color.blue. And then I'm just gonna draw it out. So fill rect, XY, width 32, we'll say height 48. And let's make the rectangle real quick. So we're gonna return a new rectangle. This is gonna be like the bounding box of our player. So like just a rectangle that we're gonna use for collisions in the future. So now if we go ahead and add this in, so if we say handler.addObject, new wizard at 100, 100, id.player, and then we put in our handler, right? Because those are all the parameters that we used right here. And we run the game. As you can see now, I can move my player accordingly in the game, which is really, really cool. And now if I like really scribble around with my keys, you're not getting any sort of lag with the keys. Alright, so next unit, we're going to be looking into level design. Now that we've got a player moving, we can actually start creating levels now, which is really cool. I'm going to show you guys a really unique way to make levels, and we're actually going to be using it through a paint program. So I will see you guys then.